All right, AP Human Geography students, welcome. Let's get right into it and tackle a pretty big question today. Why in the world does the world map look the way it does? We're going to break down the lines, the shapes, and all the hidden politics that have carved up our planet.
I mean, really? Have you ever looked at a map and thought that? Believe it or not, the crazy shapes and sizes of countries aren't just random. There's actually a logic to the lines that separate them. And those lines, they have huge real-world consequences for everything from trade to war. So let's dive in.
Okay, first things first, we've got to get a handle on the most basic concept, the boundary. A boundary is what completely surrounds a state. It marks the absolute outer edge of its territory and, in the process, gives that state its unique shape. Now, here's a really important distinction you got to know. The difference between a boundary and a frontier. Back in the day, frontiers were what separated states. Think of them as actual zones, tangible areas where nobody really had full control. But today we have boundaries. They're invisible, super thin lines on a map. So geographers like to classify these lines into three main types. You've got cultural boundaries, which kind of follow the lines of different ethnicities or languages. Then there are physical boundaries, which use natural stuff like mountains or rivers. And then you have geometric boundaries. Just take a look at the Ozuzu Strip between Libya and Chad. It's a perfect example of a geometric boundary. It's just a straight line. It doesn't follow any natural feature. It's a totally human construct, just drawn right there on the map, usually along a line of latitude or longitude. So once these boundaries get drawn, they create states with all kinds of different shapes. And the shape of a country isn't just some fun fact for trivia night. It has major implications for how a country is governed, how it communicates, and even whether it's prone to conflict. Let's look at the 5 basic shapes you absolutely need to know.
First up is the compact state, like Burundi or Kenya. In theory, this is the most efficient shape, right? Communication should be easier, and it's simpler to defend. But, and this is a big but, being compact does not guarantee peace. Both Kenya and Rwanda, for example, have had really terrible conflicts despite having this efficient shape.
Next, we have pretty much the total opposite, the elongated state. These are countries that are long and skinny, and ma'am, that can create some serious problems. Just imagine trying to govern a country where one end is hundreds and hundreds of miles away from the capital. A classic example is the Gambia. You can see it right here. Look at how stretched out the Gambia is. It's basically just built around the Gambia River, and it's completely swallowed up by Senegal. This shape can make people in the outer regions feel totally isolated and can be a real nightmare for the government to manage. Our third shape is the prorupted state. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it's pretty simple. It's a state that's mostly compact, but has this big piece sticking out of it. We call that a protrusion. And they're usually there for one of two reasons, either to give the state access to something important, like a river, or to act as a buffer to separate two other countries. A fantastic example of a proruption is Namibia's Caprivi Strip. You can see the main part of the country is pretty compact, but then you've got this long panhandle stretching out to the east. That was put there by German colonizers specifically so they could get to the Zambezi River. So, test prep pop-up. With that long projecting piece, the Caprivi Strip, what can we clearly call Namibia? Yep, it's a classic prorupted state. See? Simple enough. All right, this next one is really unique, the perforated state. This is a country that literally has another country inside of it. Think of it like a donut. The country that's the donut hole is completely dependent on the country that's surrounding it for, well, just about everything. And the textbook example here is South Africa. It's a perforated state because it completely, totally surrounds the country of Lesotho. I mean, think about that. For Lesotho to trade with the outside world or import and export anything, it all has to go through South Africa. That creates a massive power imbalance, you know? Our fifth and final shape is the fragmented state. This is any country that's in 2 or more separate pieces. The pieces could be separated by water, like an island nation, or even by another country's territory. And as you can imagine, this creates huge challenges for communication, transportation, and just feeling like one unified nation. Take a look at Angola. You've got the main part of the country here, but see that small chunk of land up north, Cabinda? That's also part of Angola, but it's separated by a strip of the Democratic Republic of Congo. This kind of fragmentation can cause all sorts of political and economic headaches. Okay, one more key term that's related to all this. It's not one of the 5 shapes, but it's a critical geographic challenge, being a landlocked state. This just means a country has no direct access to an ocean, which is a massive disadvantage because so much of the world's trade happens by sea. You're totally reliant on your neighbors to get your stuff to a port.
So we've seen how these big boundaries shape entire countries, but drawing lines has a huge impact inside countries too, especially when we're talking about who gets to vote where. When these internal district lines are drawn not for fairness but for political advantage, that's called gerrymandering. And here's a fun little story about where that weird name comes from. Way back in 1812, the governor of Massachusetts, Elbridge Gerry, signed a bill that created this bizarrely shaped voting district just to help his own party. An opponent looked at it and said it looked like a salamander. Another guy shot back, no, it's a gerrymander. And the name just stuck. So how does this actually work? Well, the political parties in power basically have two main strategies they use to draw maps that help them win. They're called cracking and packing, and both of them are designed to waste the votes of the other party. Cracking is when you take a big group of your opponent's voters and you spread them out thinly across a whole bunch of different districts. That way they become a minority in every single one of those districts, and their votes are basically wasted because they can never get a majority anywhere. Packing is the exact opposite strategy. This time, you cram as many of your opponent's voters as you possibly can into just one or maybe a few districts. Sure, they'll win those districts by a landslide, but you've effectively pulled their voters out of all the surrounding districts, which makes those much easier for your party to win. This 2022 map from Florida is a perfect real-world example of packing. Look at District 14, there in blue. It is packed to the gills with Democratic-leaning voters. They will almost definitely win that one district. But by concentrating them all there, the surrounding districts, 12, 13, 15, and 16, all become much easier for Republican candidates to win. Okay, so let's pull this all together. What have we learned? First, boundaries are the invisible lines that define a state's territory. Second, the shape that results from those lines creates some really unique advantages and challenges. And third, even the lines inside a country can be manipulated through gerrymandering for political power. And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. Modern GIS, that's Geographic Information Systems, has already made gerrymandering way more precise than ever before. So the real question for your generation is this: how will new technologies, maybe like AI, completely reshape how we think about boundaries, territory, and political power in the years to come? It's a lot to think about. Thanks for joining me.